I'll ask you just quickly, the film director Olivia Wilde has a new movie out, which she says is based on you, this insane man, this pseudo-intellectual hero to the incel community. Incel being these weirdo loner men who are despicable in many ways. Is that you? Are you the intellectual hero to these people?
Sure. Why not? You know, people have been after me for a long time because I've been speaking to disaffected young men. You know, what a terrible thing to do that is. I thought the marginalized were supposed to have a voice.
It's making you emotional. Talk about that.
Well, God, you know, it's very difficult to understand how demoralized people are. And certainly many young men are in that category. And you get these casual insults, these incels. What does it mean? It's like, well, these men, they don't know how to make themselves attractive to women who are very picky, and good for them. Women, like, be picky. That's your gift, man. Demand high standards from your men. Fair enough. But all these men who are alienated, it's like they're lonesome and they don't know what to do, and everyone piles abuse on them.
You've been so controlled today, and yet in that brief moment, you got very emotional. Why?
It's really something to see constantly how many people are dying for lack of an encouraging word. And how easy it is to provide that if you're careful. You know, give credit where credit is due. And to say, you're a net force for good if you want to be.
Do you believe you're a net force for good?
Net, yes. In all the details, probably not. You know, no one's perfect. So people make their mistakes as they stumble uphill.
All right, guys, so you just saw it in this video. Jordan gets really emotional when he's asked if he is the leader of these incels, these freaks. And to be honest with you, the first thing that I want to say is, like, dude, this interviewer, I forget his name right now, but man, what a savage way to describe a group of people. He calls them weirdos, and he essentially says that, you know, they are these deprived people, like the lowest of the low in humanity. And he asks how Jordan feels about being the quote-unquote leader of these incels. And for me, I feel like Jordan's reaction was a combination of a lot of things. And before I tell you what that is, I want to share with you guys a similar situation that happened to me. So I used to be the leader of the youth group in my church alongside my wife. And there was a time, and this was the season where this group of kids were going to go off to college. And I was up in the altar about to pray for them, and I was speaking to them directly. And at that moment, I became emotional, and people could pick up on this by the way that my voice was fluctuating a bit. And to be honest with you guys, that was a surprise, not only to me, but also the people that knew me, especially my wife, because I'm not generally the type of person that gets emotional. And if I think back to that moment, the reason why I started to become a bit emotional, and you could hear it in my voice, and this was something that happened to me subconsciously, and it wasn't something that I realized until after the fact. And that is that at that moment, I thought about all of the things that these kids were going to face, right? They were going to go off into a world where their fundamental thoughts and ideas were going to be challenged, right? I thought about how in and of itself, this proving ground could lead them away from God, or could lead them closer to God. And I had seen what either side would mean for their lives. So in that moment, when I was thinking about their future, I was thinking about all of these things. And then my voice became, and it's not just my voice, but I just became a little bit emotional at that moment. And I think that something similar is happening to Jordan Peterson. And I want to say this because there's a few things that we need to think about. When you think about Jordan's age, right? He is at a point in his life, he's older, 60 plus, I would think at this point, where he has seen a lot of things, right? As you get older, you start seeing the sad and bad side of life. You see that there are people that die in your family. They are people that in your life personally are going through struggles because of the decisions that they've made. The other thing that we need to think about is his profession, right? He is a psychologist, right? So he had a practice, and it's not beyond the realm of possibility that some of the people that he actually treated were men that were struggling with depression, men that were quote unquote incels, where they found themselves in a place where they weren't attractive to women. And I'm sure that he could relate to all of the struggles that these guys had been going through. And the last thing that we need to think about is the position that he is when it comes to being a personality or a celebrity, where in his talks and in the field that he is in, he comes into contact with a lot of young men that are struggling with life. A lot of men that don't know what to do with their lives, that haven't gotten it all together. And he has seen the pain that can cause. And I'm sure that at that moment, when that man asked him if he considered himself the leader of these weirdos, all that came into play when we saw the reaction that we saw in him. And that was an emotional reaction of a person that felt empathy for these men that are struggling, these men that are going through it at that moment. For me, one of the key takeaways that we can take away as Christians is that sense of empathy, right? Us trying to understand the other person that we are talking to, whether we agree with them or not, right? This is a tool that I myself am working on because as I have shared with you guys, I am not the most emotional person. I'm not the most in tune with my feelings, as they would say, but I know that because I'm not as effective as someone that can put themselves in the shoe of the other person, because whether we can explain it or articulate this to them with our words, it definitely comes out in the way that we speak to others. So for us, one of the biggest takeaways from this is that we need to be empathetic towards other people and their situations. So let me know in the comments, do you yourself understand? Are you on the side that understands why Jordan got emotional? Are you on the side that, maybe you think that he's just an old man and he has no right, to be emotional, or he shouldn't be getting emotional? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And as always, I just want to remind you that we must persevere.